Yeah?
Yeah.
My number 3 is a game called Delta on the Xbox 360. It's an indie game, and this is a hell of a thing. It's in the menus. It's sort of cryptic, I suppose, some kind of cryptic sort of description for what it is. It says Hyper Vector Color Laserscape, and put incredibly crudely, or in parlance that people will understand, it's basically an endless runner, except you're not a person, you're a targeting reticule, and you're travelling into a vortex through triangles while avoiding walls and squares and rectangles. And it's been made using sort of wireframe vector graphics. There's a really appealing piece of music, sort of ambient, I don't know what you could, just ambient sort of soundscape on the soundtrack that you contribute to by flying through those triangles, and that's, flying through triangles is also how you earn points. The game moves so ludicrously quickly that the perpetual dilemma is that if you avoid risk, you often don't score any points and you don't progress. Every time you start the game, each match or round or whatever you want to call it is reasonably straightforward for about 8 or 9 seconds, and then the colours of the backgrounds and the obstacles start to change and morph, and the perspective starts shifting around you, and at first it's almost impossible to tell the difference between what's an obstacle and what isn't. You only start to be able to do that from practice and really intense concentration. Sort of similarly, the reticule moves so slowly that you often have to gamble on where the triangles are going to be, because by the time you've spotted one, if you're on the other side of the screen, you don't have the time to actually move over to it because the reticule moves so slowly. And perversely, the only command aside from left thumbstick, which controls the reticule, is to hold down A, and that slows the reticule down even further. And that just seemed like a perverse joke. I mean, until I tried holding it down. And it did make some of the first sections a little bit easier, just because you stay more or less in the centre of the screen, and the difference between being to the left and the right of something is quite small, so it felt right anyway. It's insanely difficult, but it's so gratifying and so compelling. It made me think of two things: Rez and Super Hexagon, and actually Terry Kavanagh is name checked in the credits.
Okay.
The Rez thing is because the reticule looks kind of like the one from Rez. And at the end of each section, because it's sort of broken up into 10-15 second sections, to denote the end of each one, the music comes to this sort of crescendo with a very light sort of Rez-like drum loop, which reminded me of Rez. And Super Hexagon, there's kind of a mild superficial connection visually. But when you die, your option is again, which is what that lady shouts at you in Super Hexagon.
Oh, yeah.
And this game has a very similar breakneck pace to that. But this is basically an absolute treat. It's exactly the kind of sort of bold, experimental, and more importantly, utterly functional kind of content that I always thought XBig was going to be stuffed with. And it absolutely is not. It's really exciting, really invigorating. It reminded me, like I said, of Rez and Super Hexagon, and it costs 69 pence. What are you doing with your life? Go and buy it. And, don't get me wrong. It's as slight as that price suggests that it's going to be, but it's stylish as fuck, and it's original, and it's got replay value like you wouldn't believe. And it's a real console game as well. My first instinct was like, oh, maybe this would work on a phone. It's such a console game. Get it now.